Hello, and here we are again for another great episode of Husky Hoops. I am your host, the best podcast host in the universe, Steve Cully, and I am on time this week, so I get a gold star. With us, as always, the voice of the Huskies, the best of the best, the icon himself, Mr. Joe D'Ambrosio. Joe? Yeah, nice to see you as well. And we also have our lovely Uconn women's legend, Maria Conlon, now head basketball coach at Western Connecticut State. She's a Wolf now. Hi, Maria.
What's up, guys?
Well, we have a lot to talk about with the Huskies basketball team, and I think we should start with the surprise over the weekend that we got from both places. Joe, Seton Hall. They go to Seton Hall, and they lay quite an egg.
I think easy to say it's the worst loss of the Hurley era. Might be the worst loss since a dreadful loss to George Mason in the 06 Elite Eight, or taking it back further to a devastating loss at Miami back in 02. But look, you got to be able to inbound the basketball. They couldn't inbound the ball 7 times. It's not just on the kids. It's on the coaches. It's on everybody. So, I mean, that was easily, that was a loss that maybe made people think once and for all, this team's not going to three-peat, which I've been saying since the start.
You did. And, I mean, it went to overtime. They were lucky to get it to overtime, and then just nothing. And Hurley really claimed that it was the bench. They said that he threw the bench under the bus, his players under the bus, by saying he doesn't have anything off the bench. But looking at the stats, it's kind of true. He's not getting a lot of help when he has to go to the bench.
Well, let me interrupt you for a minute. Who recruited those players? Did they just walk in on their own?
I don't believe so. I believe they were offered scholarships by Coach Hurley and his staff.
Yep.
So I agree. But the only production they got, even at Villanova, was Reed, really, who came in and played 23 minutes. The other guys
saved the game.
Yeah, when against Villanova with that layup at the end. But other than that, I mean, even Caravan as a starter, he's kind of disappearing from scoring. He's not producing as much. Sampson, I mean, he can be dead weight out there. What are they going to do? Do they have to change the lineup?
You look at the numbers from last night. Stewart played 57 seconds in the first half, went in, made 2 stupid mistakes, got pulled, and never came back till he had to take Caravan out because he was going to put pressure on. Mahaney played less than 2 minutes. Ross played – what did Ross play? Ross played 2:34. Noel was thrown into an impossible spot.
Right.
Played less than 4 minutes. You're not going to win with 6 players.
No.
You're just not, unless they're Bird, Havlicek, McHale, Parrish, Dennis Johnson, and Bill Russell. Maybe you'll win with those 6 players.
Right.
But the way the game is played now, it's hard. Obviously, the Mahaney kid has lost all of his confidence. That's pretty evident. Ross, I think Ross has no confidence at all. Noel, you didn't play him earlier when he was healthy. He missed a bunch of time when he was hurt. Now you throw him in last night for 4 minutes because you got to give Hassan a rest. So, it's the same. It's the same story, guys, and Maria, that we've seen all year. It's a 6-player team. Stewart's inconsistency. I was the biggest Jalen Stewart fan early.
Yeah, you said that.
He's doing consistent.
Yeah, he is. Maria, what were your thoughts? I mean, because like Joe said, I mean, they can only play 6 guys, and they're not going to go far with that. And you know that as a coach, that you have to play 8 people at minimum.
Yeah, I mean, the Seton Hall game was so I watched it on my phone. We had a game, so I was watching it on my phone. I and it was started snowing. So I got in my car to leave to go home, and I think we were up 5 with like maybe 14 seconds left or whatever the heck it was. It wasn't much time. And I was like, all right, we got this in the bag. Then all of a sudden I'm driving home and I'm getting text messages like, holy cow, did you see this men's game? And in my head, I'm like, what are they talking about? So then I get on my phone and I see that we lost in overtime. I went home and watched the entire second half over again. And I was just blown away by the horrible decision making in the last couple of minutes of regulation specifically. And then that kind of carried over into overtime. And I think like what I've been saying all year, and this is like a true example, even last night, I mean, they pulled it out last night, but they were down 14 at one point. They went on a nice run, is their inability to like close the door on people and then lock it shut and bury it 6 feet under. Like this constant letting people hang around that shouldn't be able to hang around it bites you in the ass sometimes, you know? And I think we saw that versus Seton Hall. We almost saw it again last night. You know, I thought Villanova got cold in the last couple of minutes of the game, thankfully. You know, I think 2 things that I see consistent. One I've been talking about is our players leaving their feet way too much in the paint, trying to block shots everywhere and getting them into compromised situations, I think has really hurt them. And it hurt them last night too, quite a few times. And I think secondly, which I'm surprised by, is our inability to guard off the dribble. I mean, these guys from Villanova last night are just like head down, driving to the rim. They're getting to the cup like way too easy. And I just think that come down to crunch time, you can't get that lucky that many times, right? Like we've had so many close games. Some have gone our way, some haven't. But there's something that's just not clicking. I did read Alex Caravan calling the whole team out and saying that they're soft, which I would have thought like they would have come out guns blazing last night because of all of that and because of the loss. And they didn't. Like they didn't pick it up until the last 5 minutes of the game, really?
That was it.
5 minutes.
They went on a 27-6 run at the end.
Yeah, and I just think like their talent and their you know, I thought Reed played really well down the stretch last night. He had some big plays around the rim. I thought McNeely made some really nice plays.
But he's the poster child, Maria. He's the poster child for leaving his feet.
100%. 100%. But I think on the offensive end, he did some things on the offensive end late in the game that really helped them, I thought. But yeah, him and Sampson leave their feet way too much. And it's not like they're like Klingon used to leave his feet, but his timing was better. And even if he didn't block the shot, he was changing the trajectory of it in some way.
Right. Yep.
These guys, they leave their feet, they come down, and the player hasn't even left the ground yet. So they're creating contact at the rim. I think that we are putting guys to the free throw line a little too much, especially early on. I just think that our rim protection is dismal. Because again, like even these guards that are driving to the rim, like they weren't doing that a year ago. And it's not because these guys were that much more phenomenal guarding off the dribble. It's just we just have better rim protection. I think the scouting reports out where like get downhill on the guards and get the bigs off their feet and you can score around the rim. And that I think that's what we're seeing consistently. And it's got to change if they want to go far.
Look, Villanova missed 13 of their last 15 shots. They missed their last 7. They make half of those shots. We're talking about 2 straight brutal losses for UConn. Because look, this Villanova team's average at best in what's a mediocre Big East. Average at best. And their 2 best players, Dixon and Poplar.
Poplar. Yep.
They combined to go 10 for 34.
Right.
And still they were up 14 points with 12 minutes to go.
And if Villanova doesn't go completely ice cold, I think you're right. I think we lose that game by 12 or 14 easily.
Yeah. And
I think Maria, you brought up a great point. The scouting report is out. Like when that Marquette game, which we won, when they came back, the guards were blowing by our guys and just getting right to the basket. And then in St. John's, when they needed it, they did the same exact thing. St. John's did the same exact thing. So now you have even teams with okay guards, not the level of the Marquette guys and the St. John's guys, that are doing the same exact thing and having similar success. And the point on Reed and McNeely, I mean, McNeely is the leader. When he's the most fiery guy. I don't know if it's misplaced at times, but he has the energy and he made plays down the stretch. And he went to Reed at the right time. Then once Reed hurt his ankle, it was like all of a sudden he was now determined, and he didn't leave his feet because he couldn't right at that point. So they tried to go at him a couple of times down the stretch. And but I think it's the inconsistency as far as defensive play is such an issue.
I think there's one other point to make here. Joe, tell me how you feel about this. As much as I love Caravan and McNeely, when you have them both in the lineup and they have to guard it all in the perimeter, let's face it, they're both liabilities off the dribble. Because I think you even see that with McNeely.
So is the ball.
I agree. So now you have multiple guys who are your better scorers that are just huge liabilities on defense. And without a strong rim protector that can kind of back them up when they get beat. I mean, I saw a drive yesterday. It was from the left wing, second half. Blows by McNeely, right-handed layup. There wasn't another Uconn player anywhere near the paint. Where was the help side? Where's the rim protection there? It was non-existent. And I think that if you're going to get a lot of minutes with those three guys having to guard on the perimeter, somebody's got to stay at home and be a rim protector and not leave their feet. It's just.
Yeah, I totally agree. You look at the lack of charges that this team takes, and that's a telltale sign that they have no. Well, it's the TikTok, but it's also defensive ability to figure out where the opposition is going and plant your ass there.
It's positional defense. You should be there waiting.
They don't take any. It's a poor defensive team. Let's be honest.
No, they're not even in position to take charges.
Right.
That drive past.
Yeah,
that drive past McNeely at a critical point in the second half. When I say there's no one there, someone's got to be already in help side underneath the rim, ready to slide over on the block and take a charge there.
Right. It's an average defensive team, and there's times that you put people on the floor that it's a little below average. Now, when they fell behind and they brought Stewart in for Caravan, and he was at the top of the press, then they caused a little bit of havoc. What they forced Villanova to do was to take quick shots, and that got Villanova out of its rhythm. But for the first 28 minutes of the game, Villanova got any shot it wanted.
Yeah. No, it was painful to watch both games. And I know defensively we are lacking, but I mean, even on the offensive end, scoring 68, 66 points a game, that's not going to win against St. John's or Creighton or Marquette or any of these top teams. That's the other thing that concerns.
I think in the past, UConn always did such a great job of creating offense out of their defense. So if you can pick up 10 to 14 points a game off your defense, you're probably where you need to be from a scoring perspective. But when you're not doing that and you're not a flourishing half-court offensive team either, it's a lot of pressure. Joe, how many points in the paint did Villanova score last night?
They got, hold on a minute. I can give you that in 2 seconds.
I think they only had 8 at halftime. Now, I don't know if they count these drives from the wing as points in the paint.
They only had 16. They only had 16.
But see, I don't. So I think that play where he takes McNeely off the dribble, I don't think they count that as a point in the paint because it didn't establish from there.
Right.
But I would be curious how many drives from the wings or the corners where they gave up dunks or layups that they actually gave up against Villanova.
Yeah, and Joe's
And
right.
that's not a stat we could probably find, but I mean, I can recall like 12 in the second half alone.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm just looking for their Ken Palm defensive rating.
I mean, they were.
I don't buy in all this analytics crap, but sometimes it does tell a good story. And look, their Ken Palm defensive rating is miserable. So
What is that based on, Joe? Because
it's the adjusted defensive efficiency, Steve. It's points allowed per 100 possessions.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Which is kind of goofy because you never have 100 possessions in a college basketball game.
Correct. And you're right. Villanova was ice cold in the second half. I mean, they were 8 for 25 from the field and 3 from 12 from 3-point. If they, like you said, hit a couple more of those shots, we're talking 2 critical losses in the Big East. And they still have a tough road to go to get to the tournament. I mean, Dave, what do you think?
Well, I think the tournament, it's funny to think that, but if they lose some of these games, like, would they be on the bubble? I mean, they'll get in, but
18-8,
would they be on the bubble, which is a crazy – I think the Hartford Courant put something out there about that. Would they be on the bubble?
Well, that was just taking everybody's – that wasn't original reporting. That was taking all the bracketology.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think ESPN did.
Were they like a 9 seed to start right now or something like that? If it was
let me ask you this. So if there's a 9 seed, they can beat a number 8. Of the projected number 1 seeds, which one are they going to beat? Are they going to beat Cooper Flag? No.
No.
Are they going to beat Auburn? No. Are they going to beat Alabama? Doubtful. I mean, look, the reality is, and there's nothing to say, guys, that they can't go on a run here at the end of the year. But past performances are usually indicative of what's going to happen in the future. I think they struggle with St. John's on Sunday. I don't think there's any question about that. I think Marquette coming in here is going to be looking for revenge, and then they should win the other games. And then, you know what? Go to Madison Square Garden and win a couple of games. And maybe get off that 8-9 line, get out of that 6-7 line where you've got a better chance to advance.
Yeah. 100%.
The crazy part, though, is, and what you're saying, Joe, is like they should win all those other games. We've seen them lose games that they should win, and that's the danger zone, I think, with this team is like, I now think everyone in the league is like, we could get Uconn on any night. Right. And that's the scary part, you know.
Right.
If they drop a couple of more that they shouldn't, and maybe they lose some that they potentially should, you know. It's like we're looking at a 10-loss season potentially.
What do they need to change, do you think?
Well, I think they've just got to become more consistent. They have the talent.
They have the talent. It's schematic.
But other than McNeely and Solo, it's wildly inconsistent.
Yeah.
You know, you cringe every time Caravan takes a shot.
Which is shocking.
He's played himself into a low second-round pick.
Yeah. Yeah, totally unexpected.
You know, you don't know what you're going to get out of the middle from game to game. That's mix and match. I think the coaches have done a really good job as far as going for the feel of the game in deciding whether it's Sampson or whether it's Terrace Reed Jr.
Right.
But, you know, you've got Diarra is inconsistent. Nobody knows what you're going to get off the bench from game to game. It's hard.
No, it's hard to manage it. Yeah. And Dave
I personally think they gotta tighten up. They gotta fix the defensive end, and they gotta fix it fast, because I think that the rim protection is the worst that we've seen in many, many years at Uconn. That's kind of always been our thing, right? Is like that rim protection. I think guarding people off the dribble is a big thing. And it's like a catch-22, because I feel like if we give these guys a step, now they're shooting threes.
Right.
And they're draining threes, right? Like in the first half versus Villanova last night, they were making outside shots, so we tightened up on them, and then they blow right by us. So there's got to be a healthy mix of what they're doing. I don't know if that's some kind of like funky matchup zone where you can keep one of the big guys in the middle to protect and slide into help side. But the man-to-man grind out just doesn't – there just seems to be a few too many holes in that, in my opinion, for them to be able to go far in the tournament no matter what seed they're at. Because if you can't defend in the tournament, I mean, you're going to see people shoot the lights out. You're going to face teams that are going to play out of their minds every single time, especially because they're defending champs. Everybody's going to want to knock them off. I think it starts on the defensive end for me personally.
Yeah, it's everyone's national championship game against Uconn. Joe, do you think that the health could still be an issue with McNeely's ankle? Reed, do you think that health doesn't have it?
Steve, if you're hurt, don't play.
Yep.
If you're hurt, don't play.
Yep,
everybody's banged up at this time of the year. Everybody, McNeely looks fine. In fact, to be honest with you, somebody pointed this out. McNeely is the freshest of the guys because he missed 8 games. The rest of them are dragging. Right. You don't know what goes on inside that Worth Center at practice. You don't know how hard they're grinding them in practice. And then every game is life or death. I just think they look tired.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now,
except for McNeely. McNeely does not look tired, but he had a month off.
I wanted to ask because Dave and I were discussing this the other night about we went back to the NIL discussion, and we just took a look at the rankings, and the SEC has 9 teams in the top 25, where traditionally they haven't had that many teams that were good. And is the NIL a factor? Is the NIL trickling down to basketball now because they're getting so much money from football?
I don't know. It's impossible to quantitatively figure that out. Nobody's going to tell you what they're giving individual players. It's all guesswork.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah.
Dave and I were talking about this.
I wouldn't think NIL should be a problem at Uconn.
Yeah. But
you got guys doing. You got a couple of guys doing ads for. I mean, even Aiden Mahaney's doing a car ad.
Right.
So is NIL a factor in football? Yes. Is it a factor in basketball? Probably not as much as we think it is.
Well, 16 teams from between women and men are from the SEC are in the top 25. That's by far the highest of all the conferences. I think the second might have been Big 12, but it was significant. Obviously, Big East is way down the lot on this. So Big East had 6. They had two women's teams and 4 men's teams. And UConn is not obviously in the top 25 on the men's side. So it definitely has more money than the Big East as a whole. Not necessarily UConn per se in basketball, but as a whole, it definitely does.
Well, I would say like the two best freshmen in the country in men's basketball right now are not in the SEC.
Right. They are.
Flag is ACC, right?
One's in the ACC and one's in the Big East.
Right.
There you go.
But that doesn't mean the rest aren't being dispersed. So at the high end, I think you're on. And I think in basketball, you're right about that. The high end person is obviously the biggest impact person. But who has a problem? Supposedly, I don't know. Maybe because they don't like him. But Hubert Davis has already expressed that, like at UNC, they have like an issue where Duke does not. Duke does not have any issue. They have huge coffers. But UNC in basketball, he basically, and I don't know if that has to do with them not being happy with him that he doesn't have as much money, but he has basically said like that he doesn't have the money that Duke has to get the players to compete with them, and that kind of it's being played and put into football with Belichick, right? So
he's on a mission right now. He's building a war chest.
Which I thought was interesting, just because it's UNC. I would never in a million years think it would ever flip that other way. But I guess it's case by case. I mean, SEC as a whole, there's no doubt. I mean, Auburn.
Yeah, No one.
Bruce Pearl there's no doubt he's buying players. I mean, he's the best at it. He was buying them.
He was buying them when you couldn't buy. He was
Yeah.
buying them when you weren't supposed to buy them.
That's right. He was the best when you weren't allowed to at doing it. So, but it is an interesting thing. Obviously, conferences like the AAC, what do they have? 2 total between them? Maybe, I don't know. They're obviously crushed from that standpoint, but it's there's no doubt it's an issue. And then how they disperse the money inside when that money comes from TV revenue, how that decides to go is going to have an impact on recruiting. But I guess it just means they have to fundraise more on the outside if you need to. But
yeah, I don't even know what our Big East television contract is, but that's going to come into play next year. But I think for basketball, it's 1 or 2 guys that you really have to pay that you bring in as a freshman. And, you're lucky if they stay, because McNeely's probably not – he's going to be gone. And they're going to lose Caravan too. So that's another issue you're dealing with. You're bringing in these top players. You're paying them for a year. They're basically mercenaries or hired guns. And then they're out. And that I couldn't imagine being a coach and having to recruit and deal with that year in and year out, being constantly, knowing I'm bringing a guy in, he's probably going to be gone.
Steve, you know how they deal with it? On the 1st and 15th every month when the paycheck comes in. That's how they deal with it. Don't whine about the coaches. They know what they've gotten into.
They know it. They know what the deal is now. They know what the deal is now.
And the ones that don't, they'll be out.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And Maria, that's not an issue really with the women because they're not allowed to leave early, are they?
Oh, they have to. Well, they could technically leave before their eligibility is over, so long as they graduate. But yeah.
Okay. That's
there would be no incentive for a girl to leave early from college right now.
With the salaries
it would make no sense anyways.
Yeah,
but there is the one and done probably applies to both men and women. I'm assuming. No, it doesn't. I didn't know that. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the women can't leave early. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. It's always been that way. And Maria is right. The salary structure in the WNBA, they make more in college.
Well, to me, not that they would leave early, but it doesn't seem correct that they shouldn't both be able to leave early if they wanted to. I mean, I understand the financial implications why you might not want to. You could probably make more money in college, at least early on. But
yeah. Well, Caitlin Clark is only getting paid $78,000 from her salary, and the article on ESPN said her economic impact to Indiana was like $36 million with attendance and TV and merch sales. But the WNBA still lost $50 million this year, even with all that.
Did they really?
But Steve, come on. What do you think? You think Caitlin Clark isn't making a gajillion dollars with all the ads that she does? Come on.
No, I don't. I think she's
Angel Reese has her own. I went to McDonald's the other day. My bag had Angel Reese on it.
Yeah. Well, she's the one who complained.
It had Angel Reese on the bag.
She complained like she can't afford to live there.
She's literally on the McDonald's bag. I'm not kidding.
I know.
She's getting paid. He's definitely getting paid. I mean, she's on the McDonald's bag.
It's hilarious. Maria, they had said in the WNBA, the CBA, they opted out of it. And for next year, they could have a lockout if they don't get a better deal. What do you think they should be getting for the players? The salaries breakdown. Should they be getting paid that much more? Should they be getting in the 7 figures?
I don't know how you can justify them getting in the 7 figures yet. Yeah. Just based off of the revenue of the league, should they be getting paid more than what they get paid? Probably. I don't know if it's 7 figures. I don't know that the league can sustain that yet, from a financial perspective. So I think that's a big thing. I think that doing a lockout for the WNBA this coming year would be a tragic mistake for the players because you got to capitalize on.
It would be
you have to capitalize on the popularity and the marketability of the players. I think
it's never been higher.
I think that would just not be a smart move for them. Doesn't mean that they don't have a right to do it or whatever they see fit. But for me personally, I think that with the momentum that they have with the sport and with the following, I think that would put a real sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. And, I think they can still continue to fight for what they feel like they deserve, but not have a lockout.
Right.
That's just my personal opinion. Obviously, I'm not in the thick of it, but I just think that would be foolish at this point.
And they got a pretty good television deal that they just negotiated.
I'll tell you what's interesting is the 3v3 league that they're doing.
Yeah,
I don't know how many people watch it on television, but it's a gigantic on like social media because you get the clips out of it, like all those clips that you get out of 3v3 that I don't know how it's doing television wise, but I see clips of it all over the place. I mean, all over the place, the 3v3 women's league.
No, the ratings have been good. And they all get paid $220,000.
Is that what they get paid?
Yeah, I would say that. See, I think the ratings. I don't think the ratings have been as good as they thought they should be.
Nowhere close.
I think in part that has to do with the fact that Caitlin Clark is not playing. I do believe that. Me personally, in the beginning when I was watching it, I was like, all right, this is kind of fun. This is cool. I got to tell you, I've watched a couple recently, and I think it's stupid. I actually hate watching it now because to me, it's just 3-on-3 fast breaks, right? Because you don't like the whole pure art of 3-on-3 is like, it's a grind. It's half court. You can't hide. Like you got to play defense the whole time. Now it's like, all right, somebody gets a rebound. You're throwing it down court for a layup. It's like you're seeing more layups than you are skill, or anything in a half court sense. So, I mean, I get where they were going with trying to make it a full court 3-on-3 game, but I still like the international style of the pure half court. I think that
I agree.
I don't find it as entertaining. It's not like these girls can dunk. So like watching 30, 40 layups a game is just it's not entertaining for me.
No. And the ratings have dipped since it started.
They dropped off.
Not doing anywhere near as well as it was. And let me go back to the WNBA thing for a minute because I just clicked on a website. Here's the problem with the WNBA, okay? How the hell is Azurá Stevens making more money in a contract than Breanna Stewart? In what universe does that make any sense? Can you explain that to me, Maria?
I have no words. There are a bunch of people where I'm like, I cannot believe that this girl is making this amount of money.
Azurá
3-4 months out of the year.
Azurá Stevens makes $215,000.
That's close to the max. Yep.
Well, no, the max is $241,000. That's Agumake, Kalea Cooper, and Jewel Lloyd. And then you've got DT and Natasha Howard at $234,000 plus. Right. Asia Wilson, Alyssa Thomas, whiny Marina Mabry. Then Nafisa makes as much money as Azurá Stevens. That's your WNBA problem in a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, they have
by the way, Nafisa, in my opinion, she might be my favorite player to watch nowadays. I love her game. I love everything about her. She just won the 1v1 tournament that they did in Unrivaled, which, by the way, did you see Aaliyah Edwards shut out Breanna Stewart?
No, I heard about it, though.
Under 2 minutes, she shut her out 15-0 one-on-one.
Wow, she just rolled her.
Now,
wow.
Listen, in my opinion, that has no indication of like your worth as a basketball player. Anybody can get hot in a 1v1 and the other. I think Stewie had possession once, but it's kind of crazy. the WNBA makes zero sense in a lot of different ways, in my opinion. It always has and always will. The Stevens versus Stewart thing is nutty to me. That just, I don't get that at all.
Joe, does it say at all what the attendance has been for the 3-on-3 league?
No, I don't. You'll never get that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's. To be honest with you, I don't. It's not about how many people they get in the building. It's about how many eyeballs they get.
Right.
That's the only thing.
Ratings. Yeah. No, I agree. And switching over to talking about our Uconn women, they defeated St. John's, and then the big rolling of South Carolina on Sunday with AZ coming alive and just being a wrecking machine out there scoring. Joe, what did you think of the women playing?
Well, I thought I had it nailed when I said they'd get clobbered, didn't you?
Yeah.
Look, it's just proof at what a great coaching staff can do and what a bunch of players who buy in can do. And that was an ass whipping of a first degree. That was the biggest loss for South Carolina at home in God knows how long.
In years, yes.
It wasn't just, obviously, AZ. She was great, but everybody pitched in.
Yes.
Sarah Strong gets another double-double.
Yep.
Your girl Caitlin Chen gets 10.
Yes.
Shade comes in and it's 3 big threes. Paige shoots awfully, and I'd be worried about Paige's shooting because she's been in a bit of a slump, but she still had 7 rebounds and 10 assists. It was an awesome performance.
Yeah. Maria, what did you think of that game? Because I watched it, and they just looked like they came out with the mentality that we're going to dominate. They were fired up. They played with so much passion and energy that the men don't play with.
Yeah, I mean, I said last week I liked our chances because I thought our coaching staff would adjust and make some changes, and I think we saw that. I know Joe said last week, well, Dawn Staley is, a pretty good coach too. She didn't look like a great one the other day because she made 0 adjustments throughout the game. I thought everybody who played great. AZ obviously was the top scorer. She also took 12 more shots than everybody else, which was fine. She was 6 for 10 from 3. So it was nice to see her do that in a game that meant something. So I feel like, that's really good for the future. I thought Chen gave good minutes. I thought Arnold gave good minutes. The one that I actually really liked the way that she played, even though she didn't light up the box score, was El Afi. I thought she played really solid in the post. I thought she made some great, some big moves against a strong post player. I thought she did some really nice things out there that we haven't seen her do against some top teams yet this year. But I think that what Uconn did was expose some of the weaknesses of South Carolina. And I've been saying this for years now about Dawn Staley and her staff. I think that the one boat that they constantly miss out on from a recruiting perspective is just a pure shooter. Like they historically don't have a lights out shooter from the perimeter. And I think, they get into some of these games in these situations. And if your other kids are having some off nights or the adjustments on defense, you're not able to get to your spots. I think when you're down a little bit, like you need someone who can come in and hit some threes. And I just don't think they have that person on the roster. They thought maybe it could be Pow Pow, but she's controlling the offense a little bit and she can shoot the 3, but she's not a lights out running off screens kid. She's more of a, ball screen kid where if she's left open, she'll shoot it. I just think that Uconn kind of exposed that and said, all right, we're going to let them kind of shoot from the perimeter and we're going to pack it in and not give up too much on the inside. And I think that plan worked. And I just think South Carolina didn't have an answer for it. They also didn't pressure us a lot, which I found really weird, especially after the Tennessee game and how we kind of crumbled underneath the pressure a little bit. They kind of sat back and just played us in a half court. which I thought was a mistake by them. But yeah, I mean, Sarah Strong, you know, my only gripe with the game from a Uconn perspective is like not a gripe because obviously we won by almost 30 points. Was that Sarah Strong only took 10 shots. I think in the big time games, I think we need to find her a little bit more. I thought we went multiple possessions without her getting a clean look. But she played phenomenal. Everybody played phenomenal. Paige didn't light up the scoring, but she distributed the ball perfectly. I think she found everybody in their spots. So just an overall really good game. I hope they can steamroll that now. Obviously, I don't think anyone left on their schedule is going to come close to them. And I think that they steamroll through the Big East and they get ready for the tournament.
Right, but Paige going 3 for 12. And I go back to, I mean, she's only taking 12 shots. Don't you think she should be taking more? Like, you know, AZ, you said, took over 20 shots. Shouldn't Paige be in that category?
Well, I think AZ got the shots she got because they said, all right, we're going to pick one of the two that we're going to try to shut down today and hope that the one that we're leaving open is off. And Paige came out, made the first 3 of the game. You know, she had some nice plays early on. But I think Paige did a really good job of when they were doubling her and bumping her off her spots of finding those open cutters and those open shooters. And I just think AZ was the recipient of that in that specific game. So, you know, again, I've said this before. You typically, if Paige gets 12 to 16 shots, she's scoring over 20 points. I just think she had an off shooting night because she got some nice looks. I mean, she even had some mid-range jumpers that she normally hits that were just off. And honestly, AZ had a stunt there in the first half where I felt like every shot she was shooting was clanking and going long, you know, and then she caught fire a little bit when they needed her to. So, you know, it's ebbs and flows. It's finding the people that are hot when they're hot. And I thought Paige did a really good job of that.
You know, I think to Paige's credit, she saw that her shot wasn't falling. So instead of forcing stuff up, she found AZ, she found Sarah, she found shade when she was hot in the first half. I think that's a telltale sign of just what an all-around player Paige is. You know, I mean, we're tough on her because we expect so much. And I think at some point, the carrying the burden weighs you down, no matter who you are. But her ability to get other people involved on a night that she's not hitting the shots, I think says a lot about her character and says a lot about her faith in her teammates. So I don't necessarily, in a game like that, I don't necessarily see her taking 12 shots as a negative.
Right. And her versatility. And then the other thing, the depth, right? The depth of the Uconn women, the depth they can go deep into the bench like the men can't.
Like, listen, I think what we've seen with Uconn too, and Joe, you can speak to this. It seems to be a common thread. When we shoot the ball well from the outside, we tend to win and we tend to play well, right? We shot 47% from 3. You know, we made I think 12 out of 13 free throws. And then you compare that to South Carolina, who shot 17% from 3. I mean, that's a big difference right there. So I think that it's not necessarily how many shots each kid is getting, but if you can shoot 47% from 3 when you're taking 28, 33s a game, that's pretty freaking good. And then making your free throws, which I thought we did. So it seems like every game where we play really well and we end up winning, we do those two things well. And, you know, we only had 12 what do we have? 10 turnovers?
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Well, and
10 turnovers, so we took care of the ball. It's a huge deal.
I didn't jump on this comment you made earlier, but I agree with you 100%. There were no changes in South Carolina's strategy. It's almost like Dawn Staley threw up her hands and said, "This isn't our day."
Right.
Which is kind of disappointing for a coach with her ability. Now, look, I don't think they could have done anything that day and beaten UConn, but I would have expected more of adjustments as the game went on. Why not try to press? What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to beat you by 40 instead of by 29? Right?
They didn't even have a spark when they came out after halftime. South Carolina. I mean, UConn just kept.
I was waiting like. In the second half, I was like, all right, they're going to come out pressing. Like, we got to be ready for the press. We saw none of that. And I think, like, her post-game interview was a little telling, too. And,
yes.
We've seen some of this from Dawn. And I think the world of Dawn. But I think that, some of the comments and remarks that she makes in post-game interviews are interesting from the standpoint, right? Like there's been some other remarks in the past, directly hits on Uconn, etc. But she was like, there's something going on deeper within this team that we got to figure out. And in my head, I'm like, it's about to be March. Like, what do you mean you got some deeper? Like, so it was almost like insinuating that there's something that has nothing to do with basketball that's possibly wrong with this team.
They play slow.
I mean, it was kind of weird. Yeah,
they played very slow the whole game. They played very slow. South Carolina. They played very slow. Their pace was slow.
I think they played like a team that just expected to come out and just win.
Show up and win.
71 home game winning streak on the line, etc. One other storyline that I thought was cool is Sarah Strong was deciding between South Carolina and UConn of where she was going to go, and her mom is actually really good friends with Dawn. Right. And, Sarah obviously decided to go to UConn. And it's funny because when I look at South Carolina play and I watch Sarah play at UConn, listen, I think Sarah would be phenomenal no matter where she is. But I think on that team, I don't know that it would have brought out her strengths as much as it does with UConn. I think for me, it really solidified where she should be. I think it plays to her strength that she plays with some guards that can shoot the ball, can pass the ball a little bit. You don't see that on South Carolina. They're more of like a grinded in the post type team. They want to score around the rim. So, that was an interesting storyline as well. And I'm sure Sarah wanted to get that W because of that. Yeah. But yeah, I was very shocked by the lack of adjustments that were made and by some of the comments, because even if there is stuff that's going on behind the scenes with your team,
you don't.
I'm a big believer in that. That's stuff that should probably stay behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You don't kind of float that out into the air.
Why do you make that public?
I thought that was interesting, but
it's almost like she's trying to take the pressure off herself.
That's my point. Like,
you don't air your dirty laundry.
Exactly. That's what I took of it. I mean, I'm sure that there's been times where UConn's had stuff going on behind the scenes, etc. In fact, I know that there has been, but I think one thing about Gino that I've always said is he does such a phenomenal job of, deflecting the media and everybody else onto him. Obviously he called Paige out a week ago, but outside of that, I think he does a really good job of kind of taking that all on himself. I thought it would have been a really good opportunity for Dawn to kind of do the same thing. So I was a little surprised by all of that.
Taking some ownership and accountability. Yeah, Gino always does that. Joe, what do you think the outlook is for the women for the rest of the season? Do you think now they're catching fire and they're going to just roll?
Well, look, catching fire is one thing. Playing the Big East schedule is another.
Yeah, you said that.
I think they roll. I don't think they lose. They have the potential to lose a game until the Sweet 16.
Right.
I think they roll through the rest of the Big East. I think they roll through the Big East tournament, and I think they roll through the first two games of the Stores Invitational. Then you get to the Sweet 16, and then you roll the dice.
Right.
But I think what we saw against South Carolina is this team could beat Notre Dame now. This team could beat Southern Cal now. This team could beat Tennessee now. Yeah. So I don't think there's anybody out there who they can't beat.
And will they be a 1 seed if they win all the way through? If they win the rest of the way?
What's that, Chu?
Will they be a 1 seed if they win out the rest of the way?
It depends what the other teams do.
Yeah.
I think if you're not the 1, then you want to be the first number 2. because then you'd be bracketed with the worst number one in the regionals, and I think that's where you'd want to be.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree with that. I watched after our game, I watched the Texas LSU game that followed, and Texas is really good. They got some really nice pieces on that team. They play really, really physical. I thought it was a little – I don't love that they bumped UCLA down for their first loss just because USC beat them. I still think UCLA is probably the best team in the country right now, just from top to bottom and what we've seen them do. I would imagine I agree with Joe. I think best case scenario for us is we get the number 1-2 seed, which would make us play, I guess, at this point, who's number 4? USC.
Probably, yeah.
Maybe a rematch with them. Yeah, maybe a rematch with them in the Elite Eight, which is what we saw last year, right? So,
Right.
I think it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out because I don't see them losing another game. But before the NCAA tournament, I think it would be a huge upset if any of the teams in the Big East beat them. My fear always at this time of year is, okay, you just had a major high versus South Carolina. Now you got to play,
Seton
5
Hall.
or 6 games that, you can kind of roll out the ball and you're probably going to win. So
You
it's
can't
really
have a
just keeping them
letdown.
engaged on, progress over prizes right now and just getting better every day and focused on March.
Yeah.
Well, look, let's be honest. They've beaten Seton Hall 40 times in a row. It's not going to not be 41.
Right.
I don't care what kind of letdown they have.
Right.
The
Exactly.
only Big East game that could cause them some stress is Creighton.
Creighton.
And Creighton never beats UConn in women's basketball. So let's
Especially
Well, it's
at
Creighton.
home.
We got them at home this time, right? Or are we
Yes,
away?
right.
Exactly. It's home.
Yeah.
The ESPN bracketology.
So I think if Creighton was going to get us, they were going to get us at Creighton.
Right. So the ESPN bracketology.
So we got Seton Hall, Butler. Butler has no chance. And Marquette has no chance on senior day at Stores. There's no way they're going to lose these next 4 games. In my opinion, I just don't see it happening.
I agree.
What does ESPN have us as?
Well, they've got us as a 2 against Notre Dame as a 1. The other ones are South Carolina, UCLA, and Texas. So it almost looks to me like Charlie Crean has us as the number 1-2 seed already.
But isn't Notre Dame the overall number 1 right now?
Maybe, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, well, they're number 1. They're ranked number 1 in the country.
Well, maybe it is then. So that's the other number 2s are Southern Cal, LSU, and TCU.
Right. But I mean, we beat South Carolina, and if we go on to win, like you said, the next 4 games, roll through the Big East tournament, shouldn't that put us at a number 1 seed? Or is that
depends what the other teams do.
No, because the Big East is not a strong conference. So even if USC loses a game in tournament and they lose to another top team, I still think we get the number 2 seed. I think the power rankings, I mean, they have a much tougher schedule than we do, which is stuff that they take into account. So, I don't at this point, unless all 4 seeds above us lose 1 or 2 more games, I think we land at the number 2, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think, listen, no matter if you're the 1 or the 2, you're still going to have to play a really, really good team to make the Final Four.
Right.
Exactly.
So it's really irrelevant of when you play them. You got to get through those teams to do it. I would be looking more at what's that Sweet 16 team look like that we're going to have to face up against? Is it going to be a really physical SEC team or a Big Ten school that can, you could see Iowa, and Iowa looks great some days. They beat USC. If they slide in there into a 4 seed and we end up seeing them or, a 5 seed, whatever, or I guess it would be the 3 seed if we're the 2, they're going to have 2 tough games, I would say, to get to the Final Four, that Sweet 16 game and that Elite 8 game, no matter how you slice it. because I do think that the field is that much deeper this year.
Right. Totally
Yeah,
agree.
Totally
agree.
And Joe, you said this all year. Playing the Big East schedule is a detriment for the women. I mean, it really hurts them, especially when they have to play the non-conference games. Is it the Big East overall?
Well,
will
wait a
they
minute.
get better?
What do you mean, especially when they have to play the non-conference games? What is that?
No, you said that when they play out of conference, because their toughness of the Big East schedule isn't as good.
Yeah, but that's not a detriment. I never said that was a detriment.
Oh, I thought you said it was. The Big East
how is it a
schedule hurt them.
detriment? You're playing better competition.
Okay. No, I thought you said the Big East, them playing in the Big East hurts them.
Yeah, it doesn't help them, but that's why they
pushed.
play the better competition.
Right. You said that's why they schedule the non-conference games out further, because they want to play the better competition later in the season, whereas the men do not do that. They play it earlier on. So I think that's what you were saying about the Big East schedule. But
and I think that the strong out of conference schedule, whether you put it in the beginning or you put it in the end, only helps you for postseason seeding anyways, right?
You
So
need it.
Because you got to play against the power rankings and RPI and all of that stuff. But I also, I've said I prefer to kind of split it, put some in the beginning and some in the end, so you have a little preparation. I think on the men's side,
I agree.
Because, even though the Big East isn't one of the stronger conferences, it's not as diluted as the women's side is from a league perspective. And I think still having to go down to MSG and win a couple of games in the Big East tournament is still hard, no matter if you're the best team in the league or you're the 8 seed. So I think it's a little bit different if you're looking at the men versus the women.
Big time. Joe, how many teams from the women's Big East do you think will make the tournament? Who do you think is going to get in?
I think all 11 will get in.
Oh, yeah, really?
Maybe 3.
You think 3? They'll get
Maybe
3?
3. Probably 2.
Yeah. And what do you think? You think the men will get 3?
No, I think the men will get 4, clearly.
They'll get 4. Okay.
Because who are you leaving out between? So which team are you leaving out?
No,
Steve?
you're right. Creighton and Marquette.
Creighton, Marquette, and Uconn.
You're right. Dave, what did you think about that?
Well, in St. John's.
That's what I said.
Yeah, St. John's,
That's
Uconn.
Yeah, Creighton, Marquette, St. John's, Uconn.
And Uconn.
The 4 that are ranked plus Uconn.
One thing you always got to remember is the Big East tournament. What if one of these lower seeds has a great tournament and upsets and gets the at-large bid?
Yeah.
Then it puts some of those other teams. That's where you could see a team kind of falling on the bubble, right? Is if they're not going to award the Big East more teams and one of those teams doesn't win the tournament, then you got some issues. But
my argument would be, Maria, of those other teams, which team can you see making a run all the way to win the championship game?
Geez, I don't even know anymore. I mean,
I don't think I think the answer is E, none of the above.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I can see Nova winning a game or two.
St. John's can make a run?
What's that?
On the men's side, you don't think St. John's can make a run?
No, but we're counting St. John's in the tournament.
We counted them. It would have to be I think the only one that I think could maybe.
You two guys got to crank up the Miracleers.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think we've seen it in the past when it could get really hot in the tournament and a higher seed gets knocked out and you have a better matchup. But I think you're right. I mean, I don't know. Could Villanova win a couple of games? If they shoot lights out, maybe. They do have a couple of guys. I mean, they have the guy who's leading the NCAA in scoring right now. So, I mean, you could see some stuff, but I think it would be a stretch.
I think UConn will be in the Final Four of the Big East.
Oh,
I definitely do. I don't think they're going to get up. I think they'll get it. Now, from what happens from there, I think they have the ability to make a run and win the whole thing. The issue is, do they have the defensive capability to stop Marquette's guards or St. John's guards if they get into that position? That's the issue they have.
Well, and they got to stay healthy too.
Yeah, I mean they can score. I mean McNeely and Ball can score. The defensively, it's just the breakdowns defensively that happen. Maria talked about it earlier. That's the thing. If they could shore that up, McNeely can go off at any time. Like when he got hot at the end of the game of Villanova, like he took over the game.
He did.
He
put
took over the game.
through. Yeah.
He has the ability to take over the game. I mean, he's a guy that has the capability to rise higher maybe than any player in the Big East.
No, for sure. And Joe, so St. John's on
stop
Sunday.
him on defense, though. McNeely can.
No,
score
I agree
40.
with that. I agree.
He can score 40. If we can't stop him, it doesn't matter.
He might score 60, and we might not win.
The other thing about thinking somebody's going to make a run in the Big East tournament is those teams 6 through 11 would have to win 4 games, and I don't see any of those teams capable of doing that.
Right. So they have St.
Who's
John's
the 5 seed right now, Joe?
Xavier, which would be a hell of a hard game.
See, I could see Xavier. I would say if I had to pick a team that maybe could make a run, I would say Xavier. I don't know if they can sustain it, but I could see them being in the championship game.
They could be, yeah, right. Yes, they would be the one team. I would agree. If they could beat whoever the 4 seed is on the opening day,
yep,
then they can make a run.
Yeah,
I predict the Final Four.
And then that mixes everything up.
Creighton, Uconn, St. John's, Marquette, depending on which side of the brackets they're on. That's what I think would be the Final Four if it aligned properly.
Boy, you are stepping out on a limb, Shu.
I am. That's what I think. Now, if I'm right, I want $100 from everybody.
Joe, what do you see for Sunday? Do you think they can come out and play with some energy and fire and like the women have been and beat St. John's?
I think they could. I don't think they will.
You're right. You think they're still going to be?
This is the biggest thing. St. John's has been so bad for so long, or so mediocre for so long. They talk about every home game is the biggest St. John's home game in 20 years. Well, none will be bigger than Sunday at noontime at the Garden. None.
Right.
So UConn can go in and win that game.
Yeah, they're capable. Right.
There's no question. You could get, McNeely could go off for 30, Ball could go off for 20. St. John's is not a great shooting team. But do I think that'll happen? No. I think UConn will get in some foul trouble. I think the crowd will be a decidedly St. John's crowd. It's not going to be this UConn South thing that it's been in years gone by. I think there'll be UConn fans there, but I think the St. John's people will be loud. I think it's a close game. It's another tight game, and I think St. John's wins.
And Courtney Williams had a comment. Courtney, he said they need to inbound the freaking ball. That was his comment.
Well, yes, that's a valid piece of advice.
Maria, what do you think about the St. John's game?
I agree with Joe. Yeah. Listen, I'm a Patino lover.
Yeah.
I just think he's a phenomenal coach. That's not a hit on Hurley at all.
He's come back. He's
going to have these guys buttoned up and ready to go. I don't think it's going to be, a 10, 15 point game. I think it's going to come down to the last 4 minutes and UConn's ability to execute on both ends of the floor. And I give the nod to St. John's down there. I think it's going to be a lively crowd. I think they're playing for a lot more than just the game. I think they're playing for seeding. I think they're playing for postseason stuff. I would say St. John's by 6.
And that's
my prediction.
They're playing for Coach Patino. I mean, he was dead and buried, came back and got the St. John's job and got some money, turned it around there.
Hey, and my boy Tulik Brown is on the staff, and he's had one of the best moments in Madison Square Garden that we've seen. So we'll have that part to it as well. But I think St. John's probably pulls it out. I would love to see UConn get the win, but
and then
I think their guards are going to get to the rim early and often. And
then the women they have Seton Hall and Butler. you see them rolling through both.
Yeah, I mean, they shot lights out the first time against Seton Hall. I think they had like 23s that game. I don't know that we're going to make 23s, but I see us winning by 30, 35, and I will probably beat Butler by 40, 45.
Joe, same thing with you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, why? I don't think Becker's or Fudd or Strong play in the fourth quarter of either game.
Right. Dave?
Say it again. I'm sorry, you cut out.
Just the women, they got 2 easy games.
They will win all their games. They're gonna
roll.
No doubt about it. I don't care that Creighton has lost 1 game in the Big East. It's the Uconn. They're not gonna. No team women wise can beat them at all in the Big East. If it is, it would be like when the Mets won in '69 or whatever it was. Okay, so that's what kind of upset it would be. It'd be, you need Joe Namath to come in there. You'd need, Tom Seaver pitching for that's what you need. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how much I think. I don't want to jinx it by saying that, but that's what I think. I don't think anybody, especially the way that they're shooting, and now they have 3 people scoring, 4 people scoring consistently for them. I mean, I think they're going to be tough. I think they're going to be really tough in the NCAAs, but obviously anything can happen there. But I think they now are a team that has a chance to go all the way. I mean, if it keeps continuing to shape up, they have a legitimate chance. Where early in the season, I would have not thought that they did the way they were playing. So,
yep, and they got to stay healthy too.
Somehow I became a homer. By the way, I became a homer.
No. All right. Well, we get to watch the women tonight, and then the men play on Sunday. That's the big one. We'll all be watching, and hope that they come out and play with some consistency and improve defense and energy and can score. And we'll see what happens against St. John's. But thank you for the man himself, Joe D, the legend, the icon, the voice of the Huskies. And Maria, love you as always. Uconn women's legend and Western Connecticut State. She's a Wolf now. And the coach himself, David Schumann. This has been Husky Hoops. I am your host, the best podcast host in the universe, Stephen Cully. Remember, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Take 2 oranges, throw them right back.
Steve,